So red dye number 3 was banned, and like most complex topics on the internet, the conversation started to devolve into a little bit of a dumpster fire. Different opinions spouted off in different corners of social media, whether it was from confusion, celebration, or pseudoscience. So let's briefly talk about the health risks of red dye 3 and chemicals in general with helpful context from an expert. So red dye 3, sometimes seen as FDNC red number 3 or erythrosine, is made from petroleum, which is refined in huge quantities in places like Houston and can be found in a variety of products like candies, medicines, and beverages. Chemicals made from petroleum are often a part of a class of chemicals that pose risks to our health, known as endocrine disruptors. These chemicals disrupt the system in our body that controls our hormones. Suzanne Brander, a senior scientist that studies these chemicals for environmental health sciences, says,
the typical person is exposed to probably thousands of different chemicals every day.
Red dye number 3 is just one of these chemicals that we are exposed to. Current research shows that the dye can interfere with the thyroid function, result in DNA damage, and cause hyperactive behaviors in children. Now let's talk about the thyroid again. When ingested in large quantities, red dye number 3 has been found to cause thyroid cancer in male rats. Obviously, we aren't rats, and the conversation online about this ban has focused on this a lot. So why does this finding even matter to us?
Animals like rodents and now fish have been used for decades to better understand how chemicals interact with human cells and how they cause effects in humans. And that's because if you look at a fish cell and compare it to a cell in a person or a cell in a rodent, they're all going to look very similar. Evolutionarily, it hasn't changed that much. Because we all look very similar, almost the same at the cellular level, you can take information or data that is produced in one vertebrate species and you can use that to extrapolate what effects might be at the cellular and molecular level.
Brander also says that rodents and fish are commonly used by organizations like the National Institute of Health to test pharmaceuticals before they reach the phases of human trials. There is long-standing scientific history here. So while there are no current studies finding that the dye causes cancer in humans, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration recognizes that chemicals that cause cancer in animals are likely to cause cancer in humans. The agency spells this out under something called the Delaney clause. But what if we aren't consuming red dye in the same high amounts like the rats did? Different exposures from endocrine disrupting chemicals like red dye number 3 at different times in our lives can add up.
What makes it hard to understand is that it's not like I drank this thing on this one day and it had this effect. I was exposed to 2,000 different estrogenic chemicals from age 2 to age 45, and that's what caused this outcome.
In 1990, the Delaney clause forced red dye number 3 out of topicals and cosmetics. But why did it take 35 more years for these same additives to be banned in foods, beverages, and oral medications? Brander has a guess.
I think there's always this hesitancy to ban a chemical across all products because you're constantly having pushback from industry that they won't be able to make profits, they won't be able to produce products that people want to use if they can't continue to use chemical X.
She said that she's seen this same pattern play out for BPA and at the Plastics Treaty Conventions. So while red dye 3's ban will eventually prevent this chemical from disrupting your hormone system, there are still other chemicals out there that can. And online, many are asking about the remaining dyes that are still allowed. It is possible that these dyes will be looked at again in the future, but in the meantime, Brander says that risk mitigation is key to preventing hormonal disruption. Some simple steps can include not heating your food in plastic, avoiding synthetic fragrances, and chemicals like phthalates or BPA in your day-to-day life. If you have any more questions about red dye 3 or these classes of chemicals, feel free to drop them below.